the deep silence of prehistory, long before language had found its shape, and before gods had names, there was a moment when one human raised a stone against another. It was not an act of hunting. It was not to survive hunger, nor to defend against a beast. It was something new, something that had never existed before. It was the birth of intention, of anger, of the first murder in human history. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, the world was colder, quieter, and crueler than we can imagine. Europe was a continent of forests and glaciers, filled with beasts that no longer walked the earth. Among them lived an ancient human species, Homo heidelbergensis, strong, primitive, and intelligent in a way that foreshadowed us. They lived in small bands, sharing fire, food, and fear. They buried their dead in dark caves, though they didn't yet understand death. But somewhere in their world, something happened. Something that left a scar not only on one skull, but on the soul of humanity itself. The discovery came much later. Deep within the Atapuerca Mountains of northern Spain lies a cave system called Sima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones. Archaeologists, crawling through narrow tunnels and darkness, found a shaft filled with the remains of at least 28 ancient humans, buried together in a deep pit. Their bones had rested there for over 430,000 years. Many were broken by time, but one skull stood out. It belonged to a young man, his face shattered, his life ended by 2 brutal blows to the head. The fractures were not accidental. They were identical in shape and force, delivered from the same weapon, from the same direction. No fall could have done this. It was deliberate. It was personal. This was not the work of nature. It was the work of another human. And so, the world's oldest evidence of murder was uncovered, the first known killing between members of the same species. The discovery changed everything we thought we knew about our ancestors. Until then, scientists believed early humans were purely survival-driven, creatures of instinct and cooperation. But that skull told a darker story, one of emotion, jealousy, and rage. The blows showed not panic, but control. Whoever struck did not lash out wildly. They aimed. They intended to end a life. That realization opened a terrifying window into the mind of early man. The first murder was not just the first death. It was the first time a human understood what it meant to destroy another. In that cave, 430,000 years ago, a moment of emotion, maybe anger, envy, or revenge, crossed a line between survival and morality. The species had taken its first step into shadow. Sima de los Huesos was not the only evidence of this darkness. Across thousands of years and continents, traces of prehistoric violence have been found again and again. In the caves of Shanidar in Iraq, the remains of Neanderthals were discovered, some carefully buried, others bearing broken bones that told stories of brutal confrontations. In one case, a male Neanderthal skull showed signs of a healed blow to the head. He had survived the first attack, but perhaps not the second. In the Sudanese desert, another grim discovery emerged from the earth, the site of Jebel Sahaba. There, archaeologists uncovered a cemetery more than 13,000 years old, belonging to a community of early Homo sapiens. Many of the skeletons carried arrowheads and stone fragments embedded in their bones. Some had been struck multiple times. Men, women, and even children lay side by side, their deaths violent and sudden. It was not one murder, but massacre, one tribe wiped out by another. The earth itself had recorded humanity's earliest war. Together, these findings revealed something unsettling. Violence was not a mistake of civilization. It was part of our birth. Long before we built empires or armies, long before we had gods to command or laws to restrain us, humans were already fighting humans. The line between survival and cruelty had blurred before we even learned to speak. Why did it happen? Why did the first human turn against his own kind? To understand that, we must imagine what life was like in that cold world. Food was scarce. Territory meant survival. Every tool, every fire, every cave was precious. A stranger was not just competition. He was a threat. But the first murder was different. It was not a battle over meat or land. The evidence at Sima de los Huesos shows no signs of mass conflict, no struggle, no chaos. It was personal. One man killed another and then, perhaps with the group's help, dropped his body into the pit. Was it revenge? Was it fear? Or was it something deeper? A spark of the consciousness that would later define humanity? The ability to imagine death, to choose it, to inflict it. That is the paradox of being human. The same brain that created art, music, and language also learned how to kill. The murder in that cave may have echoed far beyond that single moment. It taught early humans something powerful, that violence could change outcomes. A leader could be replaced. A rival could be erased. Power could be taken, not given. From that moment, humanity's social evolution began to carry a darker current. Cooperation and compassion were not the only forces shaping us. Domination and destruction were too. Anthropologists believe that this was the beginning of what we now call social cognition, the understanding that others have minds, desires, and intentions of their own. To kill, you must first recognize that another being has thoughts like yours and choose to end them. It's the birth of empathy and cruelty at once. The same mental capacity that allows us to love also allows us to hate. The first murder was not the death of one man. It was the awakening of human complexity. As time passed, violence became ritual. Burial practices evolved, and with them came the idea of guilt, fear, and maybe even punishment. At Shanidar Cave, one Neanderthal's grave was found sprinkled with flowers, a symbol of care or remorse. Perhaps those who killed began to feel something they had never felt before, regret. The dead were no longer just bodies. They were memories, ghosts, and warnings. But the darkness didn't fade. As human intelligence grew, so did the sophistication of our cruelty. The hunter who once used a stone to crush a skull learned to sharpen it into a blade. The tribe that once fought over fire learned to fight over faith. Violence, once a desperate act, became organized, justified, and glorified. It became war, sacrifice, execution. The same instinct that began with 2 blows in a cave spread like a shadow over every civilization that followed. Modern neuroscience suggests that the roots of human aggression lie deep in our evolutionary brain. The limbic system, the part that governed emotion and survival, is ancient, older than our reason, older than morality. When that prehistoric man struck his victim, it wasn't a calculated decision. It was an eruption from that primal place. But what made it truly human was the awareness. He knew what he was doing. Somewhere in that ancient mind, perhaps for the first time, flickered the thought, I can end you. And yet, in a strange and tragic symmetry, that same mind gave birth to empathy. From death came understanding. The group that saw their companion's lifeless body may have felt sorrow, a feeling not born from instinct but from reflection. The first murderer awakened the first mourners. Violence taught us what life meant by showing us what its absence was. When scientists examined the bones of Sima de los Huesos, they found signs that the bodies had been deliberately placed in the pit, not discarded like animal remains. Whether it was a burial or a disposal, no one knows. But in that act lay the earliest hint of ritual. The living began to separate the dead from the world of the living. Perhaps they feared them. Perhaps they honored them. But in both cases, they remembered them. And memory is the seed of history. From that pit of bones, we inherited more than DNA. We inherited a contradiction. We became the species that creates and destroys, that weeps and kills, that built civilizations and burns them down. The first murder was not just a crime. It was a mirror. It showed us what we are capable of when emotion overtakes reason, when survival meets self-awareness. As time unfolded, humans spread across continents, carrying both fire and fury within them. The same hands that carved tools carved weapons. The same curiosity that painted on cave walls also invented torture. Each age repeated the pattern: tribes, kingdoms, nations, all echoing that first act of violence that took place in silence, under a dim prehistoric sky. Yet, there is something hauntingly human in that story. The first killer was not a monster. He was us, confused, emotional, alive. The difference between then and now is not as vast as we wish to believe. The weapons have changed. The mind has not. We still feel the same jealousy, the same anger, the same fear that moved that ancient hand. Civilization has built walls around our impulses, but the darkness inside remains. When archaeologists lifted that fractured skull from the pit, they weren't just studying bones. They were staring at the moment our species crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The first murder marked the beginning of morality, of law, of guilt, because from that moment onward, humans would need to explain why we kill. Every religion, every philosophy, every code of justice traces its roots to that question. Why did one of us turn against another? The answer lies not in evil, but in evolution. Violence was both our curse and our catalyst. It forced us to understand consequence, to create order, to imagine peace, because we knew the alternative. Without the first murder, perhaps we would never have sought meaning in life or death. As we look back through time, from the shadowed pit in Spain to the battlefields of history, we are reminded that humanity was born in both love and blood. The dark side of our nature is not separate from us. It is part of the story that made us human. The first murder was not just the end of a life. It was the beginning of all human emotion. The dawn of empathy, fear, guilt, and conscience. And maybe that is the real tragedy. To become human, we had to learn what it meant to destroy another. Somewhere in that ancient cave, under flickering firelight, a life was taken, and humanity was born.